Are you ready for the best damn sports radio show on the planet? Man Hour Nation, rise up.
You don't want to be every time, no. I would like to personally welcome you to Man Hour After Dark. Say that while I bring you the host, Mike, Buck, and Cone. You know who's coming to the stage. Sports talk than what you about to hear right here. I second that.
Go. You know that it's us when we talking about sports. Giving you facts on the field to the court. Tune in, we need the support. 1 hour too short, then listen some more. On all your stations, not dropping no music. Stripes like Adidas, but Nike just do it. Down 4 in the 4th, we go for the win. Michael 2 seconds, we taking it in. Buck, Mike, and Combs, you know what's going on. Man, now we're After Dark, no LA, we the big spark. No 4th and inches won't cut you short. Got the best talking, it's all sports. Buzzing more than buzz beaters. We coming live all through your speakers, go.
And what is going on, Man Hour Nation? It's your boy BC Beastie Brandon Combs coming to you solo tonight, at least for the first half hour. Then we're gonna have Graham on with his power rankings, and then Buck should be joining me for the second hour. So we'll definitely have more there. But what is going on, Man Hour Nation? What is going on to all those watching over in the UK? Eating their crumpets, drinking their tea. What is going on, 313 The Flash? What is going on with everybody who's listening to New England Sports Network? Everybody we are involved with. What is going on? We are live, baby. What's going on, Drew? Good to see you out there in the chat. Just talking to you right before the show. I asked Drew if he could chime in and help out a little bit. He asked if he could be on the payroll. Told him he could have half my pay, which is half of zero. So Drew is now on the payroll. What's going on, Alpha Rob? Alpha Rob in the chat. It's good to see you guys always showing up, man. At least it shows us that people who aren't involved in the show, who aren't invested in all the stuff we do behind the scenes, actually enjoy what we're doing. So I appreciate each and every one of you that chime in on a nightly basis. I'm sure we'll see Michelle in here later. I'm sure we'll see, everybody we're used to seeing in the chat. Hopefully we get a few more followers to come through as well. But let's get this thing kicked off here. There's been a couple of stories that have come out, caught my eye, caught my attention, some things I want to talk about while I am sitting here by myself. One of those things is the college football playoff. I'm sitting here watching. I've got Army in Missouri in the background here, watching the Armed Forces Bowl. Got all these bowl games going on. And the College Football Playoff Committee came out today and said, if there is a forfeit due to COVID, that they would still crown a champion. So let's say Georgia and Michigan, which is what everybody is looking at, which is what everybody in the College Football Playoff Committee is hoping they get for a championship game. If Alabama or if Georgia come down with a huge case of COVID and they don't have enough players to play the game or to field, I believe you have to have a minimum of, I want to say a minimum of 35 in college to be able to start a football game. And if they don't meet those minimum requirements due to COVID, due to an outbreak, then they will award the other team the title. And this is the stupidest thing I've ever heard of in my entire life. So not only are you going to give somebody a championship because another team had a COVID outbreak in a time where we all know COVID's a thing. We all know that, we're going to be dealing with people who come down with it. We're going to be dealing with teams that have outbreaks. Hell, the NHL just shut down its season for a couple of days. They're not coming back till the 26th. They're not allowing American teams to go to Canada or Canada teams to come to America. The NFL just had a few games where they moved them from Sunday to Tuesday. And college football is like, nah, we'll just crown a champion and we'll let you, we'll have you forfeit and we'll crown the other team the champion. Instead of, hey, look, you're the only two teams left. Why wouldn't you say, hey, you know what? Let's move it to the following Monday, or let's move it to Thursday, or because clearly, if there's money to be made, you don't have to follow the 10-day quarantine protocols. I mean, the NFL proved that, right? If there's money to be made, you don't have to, wait 10 days before you even get a second test, because they say when I tested positive a few months back and I wanted to get retested early because all my symptoms were gone and I was feeling fine and I wanted to get back to work, I was told it made no sense to test me before 10 days because if they test you again, you're going to have it. It takes 10 days to run its course is what they say. But when there's money to be made, the NFL shows, hey, Sunday, I mean, you don't have enough guys, but Tuesday, we'll get some more guys. We'll run some more tests. 2 days. College football playoff, they said, no. We're going to go ahead and we're just going to make you forfeit, and we're going to hand the championship to somebody else. And that is just, I mean, it's weak. It's as weak as you can get out there. And I don't understand what it is. The one thing that I can think of, as Alpha Rob says, that that's beyond stupid. I agree with you, Alpha Rob. Drew says, go Army. I am rooting for Army in this game as well. They should beat Mizzou. Army's a really good team. But what is the over-under? And this is what's going to happen, right? Because this is what's going to happen just to drive everybody absolutely positively insane. What's going to happen is you're going to have Alabama. Alabama is going to be the team that wins the national championship because somebody else forfeits. And then everybody's going to talk here of the conspiracy theorists that say, let's say Michigan beats Georgia. Now all of a sudden Michigan has a positive COVID testing. You're going to have the conspiracy theorists that say, oh, they didn't test positive. That's just what the college football playoff wanted. They just wanted Alabama to win the title. Michigan doesn't have COVID. They didn't break out with COVID. And then you're going to have that argument on your side. You're just opening yourself up for all sorts of stupid stuff. I wonder what the over-under is of Alabama winning a national championship due to a COVID-related forfeit. Because I might take that bet. I might put my good hard-earned money down on a bet that says Alabama wins the national title due to a COVID-related forfeit. Because we know, that if it's Alabama that comes down with that COVID outbreak, 110%, 110% that the college football playoff is going to reschedule the game. There is no way Alabama is going to be the team that forfeits. They'll find a way. They'll find a way to reschedule. They'll find a way to do what they want to do, which is play that game and try to get Alabama that national title. Drew says no bias, right? Yeah. There's no bias until it matters for Alabama. That's when there's a bias. There's no SEC bias unless Alabama loses to an unranked Texas A&M. There's no bias unless Alabama struggles to beat 3 unranked opponents. There's no bias then, There's no bias for Alabama to struggle against 3 ranked opponents. Notre Dame's only loss being to the other team that's in the playoff, which is Cincinnati. And they don't get in, even though they didn't struggle against anybody else. But they don't get in. The college football, to come out and say that there's no SEC bias is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. Why is it so hard for the NCAA to get this right? I don't understand. I don't understand why college football, for one, I don't understand why we're still waiting for a college football playoff, right? Let's talk about that for a minute. If we would have had a college football playoff this year, run it how they're talking about running it, right? So the top 4 conference champions get buys. Means like even a team like Georgia who was 12-1, there's no way they can't get a bye because they didn't win their conference championship. They lost to Alabama. The 5 through 8 teams would host teams ranked 9 through 12 in on-campus games in the first round. Not a problem. Quarterfinals would be played at bowl sites. Perfect. And the bracket would not take regular season rematches into account when the teams are ranked. And there would not be reseeding in the quarterfinal or semifinals. Makes sense. If you do that, you would have had Alabama, Baylor, Cincy, and Michigan. Alabama the 1 seed, Michigan the 2, Cincy the 3, and Baylor the 4. And they would all have buys. You could have had Ole Miss versus Oklahoma State. It would have been a great game. It's a great 8-9 matchup. Georgia versus Pitt. Maybe a good game, but I put my money on Georgia to blow them out. That's probably not the greatest matchup for Pitt. Then you get Notre Dame and Utah, the 6-11 matchup. Utah's got every opportunity to upset Notre Dame there. Every opportunity to upset Notre Dame. And then you have Ohio State and Michigan State. One of those two teams, Ohio State and Michigan State, would go on to play Michigan. Michigan, Ohio State, who Michigan already beat. Michigan versus Michigan State. Michigan State's already upset Michigan. It would have been a great playoff matchup. It would have been great playoff seedings. Then you would have had Utah. If they beat Notre Dame, they go to play Cincinnati, which means either Utah or Cincinnati is in the semifinals. Why did the NCAA pass up this opportunity? It makes so much sense to do it that it makes zero sense not to do it. I don't understand. I don't understand how college football continues to get this wrong. And I know people say follow the money. Follow the money. It's all in it's more football, which means more money. It's not about, they've got to play this team or they've got to play that team. No, not at all. You look at this college football playoff scenario, and you would add the winner of Ole Miss versus Oklahoma State versus Alabama. And Ole Miss has already played Alabama tough. What if Ole Miss goes off and knocks off Alabama in the quarterfinals? Now all of a sudden you've got a race. Now all of a sudden your remaining teams are, let's say, Ole Miss, let's say Georgia or Baylor. Maybe Baylor beats Georgia. Utah, if they pull off the upset versus Notre Dame, Cincinnati. And then Michigan versus, let's say, Michigan State or Ohio State. Like, that is a bracket. That is something you want to see. And to say that it's not something that the fans want to see, or it's not something that would draw more money or draw more appreciation, stop it. And for those of you that say, oh, these are college athletes, how are they supposed to go to class? Why are we pretending like they go to class? Why are we pretending like this isn't the same thing that college basketball does? Why are we pretending that college football for an extra 3 weeks, which right now is on Christmas break anyway? Why are we pretending like they can't run 3 more football games? That's what we're talking about. 3 more football games. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Actually, no, I digress. It's 6 more football games because you got the quarterfinals added in. I digress. But still, 6 more games. That's more football. It's more college football. Who doesn't want to see that? Who doesn't want to see that? Who doesn't want to see Oklahoma versus Oklahoma State? Who doesn't want to see, Notre Dame versus Utah? That would be a great game. I'm a Notre Dame fan. Maybe Notre Dame wins it. Maybe Notre Dame gets a chance to get into the playoff and go up against Cincinnati and get their rematch against Cincinnati. Not that I think that they want a rematch against Cincinnati, because I think Cincinnati would do the same thing to them. But you have the opportunity, and you don't have at that point, nobody really cares about your SEC bias because there is no SEC bias. Alabama won the SEC. They get the first round bye. The committee gets what they want. Alabama's in the freaking playoffs. Alabama's the number 1 seed. I don't understand. I don't understand why college football continues to get this wrong. It just doesn't make much sense to me. Anyway, I'm going to take my first break, and when I come back, I want to talk a little bit of boxing. I haven't talked any boxing here. I got into a little bit on Facebook today, so we're going to touch a little bit on boxing when we come back. Give me 2 minutes. And welcome back to Man Hour Nation. For all those of you that are still watching, still in the chat, Alpha Rob, Drew, appreciate you guys. Look, before we went to break, I was going off a little bit on college football. And, you know, I want to see a 12-team college football playoff. I think the committee missed out on something. But one of these other things that I've been really opinionated about over the last, I don't know, probably, let's say last couple of weeks, because we've been talking about it mostly the last couple of weeks, is boxing. And I read this story today that Le'Veon Bell, who I don't know if any of you guys saw, but he kind of called out Jake Paul after his fight the other night, which, I mean, whatever. I just don't get it. But there was a story that said he mulled retiring to become a boxer before the Tampa Bay Buccaneers just called him. And now he's going to be working out with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, going to be joining the Bucs because they're dealing with a lot of injuries in their backfield. Why are former football players still doing this? It never works out. As Drew says, you opinionated? Nah. A little bit here and there, Drew, but that's all right. It's what I do. It's what makes Man Hour. But anyway, I don't know why football players continue to do this. I mean, we've watched guy like Frank Gore. Frank Gore stepped in the ring the other night, and now he's a meme. He's a guy who you could count on his entire career to get in the end zone at least once a week. He was a guy who his entire career you could count on to get you those, 2 to 3 yards every single time you needed it. But now he's a meme because he looked scared as hell when he was getting his ass beat in that boxing ring. He looked scared as hell when he was getting pushed into the corner and they had that look on his face and he was all deer in the headlights look with like looking like he was screaming for life. Granted, he was getting mauled and wrestled like it was like some sort of freaking I don't know what the hell it was. It's tough to watch. That entire event was tough to watch. I'm glad I didn't watch it and only saw the highlights because even the highlights were tough to watch. But I don't understand why football players keep doing this to themselves. You're not boxers. You're football players. There's a reason why boxers and fighters train for 5-6 months before a fight. There's a reason why they only fight 2 or 3 times a year. Because they're fighters. They train to be so, and you're not that. And then some fighters, MMA fighters, try to get into the boxing ring, and it's not the same sport. It's not. And then they find out that they're not boxers either. They're MMA fighters. So is boxing a dead sport? And I said this a lot. I even posted something on Sports Soup, which Soup Boss is the head of that Facebook page. And I posted the video of when they showed, now his name's going to escape me there, Jake Paul's opponent this past weekend, drop his arm to seemingly to allow Jake Paul to hit him in the face. Now, Soup Boss came back at me and said, hey, look, that's not exactly what happened. That's what the video shows. Yes, when you slow it down and you look like that, that's exactly what it looks like. But he was getting hit in the kidneys and the ribs all night long, and he went down to drop because he thought that's where Jake Paul was going, and he hit him in the face. I don't care. I don't care. Boxing is one of those sports that is about where the money's at. Where does the Vegas line lie? Because where the Vegas line is at is what you're going to see happen in the ring. And you don't want to admit it if you're a boxing fan, but this is just a dead sport. Look, I know there's guys like Triple G. I know there's guys like Canelo Alvarez. I know there's guys out there that can make the fights exciting. I know there's guys out there that you want to see. However, you could probably name me about, let's say, 5 to 10 actual boxers, okay? You could name me 5 to 10 guys who you might like watching. I could name you maybe about 3 that might actually be exciting if I ever watch a boxing match again. But who are they fighting? Who are these 5 to 10 guys fighting? Each other? They're not. They're fighting other guys who aren't on their level. Boxing is a dead sport. MMA is, look, I love UFC. I'm watching UFC every single weekend. I pay for all the pay-per-views. I watch it. I love it. I used to love boxing. I used to watch back, in the day, Tyson, even going past Tyson. I mean, I used to watch a lot of boxing. I used to love watching the fights. Used to watch with my dad. That was one of the things that we actually did together growing up was watch boxing matches. But it's a dead sport. There's just not enough interest there. There's not enough good fighters left because all the good ones are in UFC. Everybody's taking up MMA. And then you got guys like Jake Paul who thinks he's a boxer and he's a clown. All he does is pick on former football players or former UFC fighters who are way past their prime. You know what? There's actually been a couple of boxers, actual boxers. One of them who's like 54 years old, who have called him out on Twitter. You know what he doesn't do? He doesn't go after those guys. Instead, he goes back after Le'Veon Bell after Le'Veon Bell tweets him. He's got 3 boxers tweeting at him that he's a clown and that he's not a fighter and that he's not a boxer. He leaves all of them alone, jumps over the top of them, and calls out Le'Veon Bell. He's not a fighter. He's not a boxer. He's Jake Paul. He's a YouTube guy. Ask me why Jake Paul hasn't said, hey, you know what? I'm so good at this and I can knock anybody out. I'm going to get in an octagon. Because he would die. Jake Paul would die if he stepped into an octagon. It's stupid. So he wants to take these guys on outside of their element. He wants to take on these guys who are retired from their sport, and he wants to take them and he wants to fight them. Boxing is a dead sport. It's just dead. Nobody wants to watch it anymore. Nobody's interested in it. All those people there to watch Jake Paul and Tyron Woodley this past weekend, they were there to hopefully see Jake Paul get knocked out. And then when Jake Paul pulled off that right hand and knocked out Tyron Woodley, everybody was happy to see the knockout because everybody likes seeing knockouts. But it was a fixed fight. They're all fixed fights. That's what boxing does. The winner of a boxing match is no different than the winner of a WWE match. It's where the money's at. What is going to make Vegas the most money? That's where it's at. See, Alpha Rob says those guys can hit 10 times in 20 seconds. He should have called out Tyson at 50-something. Will knock Paul out. If Jake Paul got in the ring with Mike Tyson would knock him out and eat his children. That's Mike Tyson. Drew says Paul would be killed in the Yes, absolutely. He would be killed in the UFC. But I'm going to get to another break, and when I come back, I will have Graham Wallace with me. We are going to go over his power rankings. It's just me and Graham, so I get to do a whole lot of yelling. When we come back, we'll be right back. What is going on, Man Hour Nation? We are back. I don't know what's going on in the chat here, but first Buck says, "Where's Buck?" And then he's got this comment that says, "Ike, good sound, Kumsinsu, Finn sold, I do be dude." I don't know. I think Buck's not here because I think Buck's drunk. I don't know what's going on right now. I know usually you can't tell what Buck's saying because usually he's stuttering through it, but this is one of those things that he typed out. There's no stutter when you type. I don't know. He's definitely got some spiked eggnog at his Christmas party that he's having right now. He's supposed to be joining me in the second hour, but I don't know if that's going to happen. I don't know if that's going to happen. He says he's fixing a water leak actually right now. I think that water leak is actually his cup of liquid going down his throat. But anyway, it is time to bring on the man, the myth, the legend. It is Graham Wallace. Graham, what's going on, guy?
Hey, Combs, good to see you. Missed you guys last week. Always good to do the power rankings.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? I think what happened was Buffalo kept losing, so you're like, I'm going to disappear for a little bit. They win, so now you're back, and you're even wearing a Bills hat. So
you got it. You called me a homer, and I'm wearing it tonight, so I can't deny it tonight. You got me.
That's awesome. So I've been on my own for the first half hour here, so it's actually good to have somebody else to talk to here. But we've got your power rankings. Before we get to your power rankings, I have a question for you.
Shoot.
Would you have rather seen college football do what they're doing now, or would you have rather seen the 12-team playoff?
So I'm not really ready for a 12-team playoff, Combs. My suggestion would be to move it to 6 or 8. 6 with a 2-team bye, and then 3 versus 6, 4 versus 5. I think that's the next logical step. Or have it be an 8-team, 1 versus 8, 2 versus 7, 3, 6, 4, and 5. I think going from 4 to 12 is a bit too much of a jump, and I think the committee is kind of with me. I'm not a member of the committee, I'll say that, but I'll be honest, I didn't watch a ton of college football this season.
Right.
But I mean, it's the same old thing. You could watch almost a handful of games, and what do you have at the end? Oh, Alabama, another team from the SEC this year happens to be Georgia. Yeah. And Michigan finally broke through. That's cool for them. And Cincinnati's been kind of banging on the door the last couple of years. Their head coach could be a bit of a dark horse name for NFL circles. Fickle, yeah. I forget his name, something like
Fickle.
That. Yeah, Fickle. So that's kind of cool. They got in, but I mean, I'm not really expecting anything different. It's probably going to be Alabama and whoever else gets in.
I would love nothing more than to see the committee implode and have Michigan beat Georgia and Cincinnati beat Alabama, and have a Cincinnati versus Michigan national title game, because the committee's heads would explode. They would find a way. They would plant COVID in Cincinnati and Michigan's locker rooms, and they would have Georgia play Alabama and let those two guys go at it, just, so that they could have those two teams in the national title game. I'm convinced. Did you hear the story? I talked about it at the beginning of the show, but they said that if there is a COVID-related breakout for one of the teams during the college football playoff, that they would not hesitate to award the national title on a COVID-related forfeit.
That's just brutal. No one wants to see that, obviously. At that point, it doesn't feel like a championship, right? I think if they had to do that, they should just cancel the final game. I don't really know what the solution is. We've been dealing with this stuff for about 2 years now. It's not easy. It's not easy to come up with solutions for this, contingency plans and all that. It's almost become a political issue, right? But I don't want to see that. No one wants to see that. The sponsorships definitely don't want to see that. So hopefully people can be safe, wear their masks, and get the boosters or whatever they want to do. Not to make it political, but just find a way to get on the field so they can play that game and make the best team win.
Yeah, and I do like the 12-team playoff just because of the way that they're talking about it. The top 4 conference champions get buys. Teams ranked 5 through 8 host the teams ranked 9 through 12 in on-campus games in the first round. Quarterfinals get played at the bowl sites, but the bracket does not take regular season rematches into account when the teams are ranked, and there will not be reseeding in the quarterfinal or semifinals. So then you get a bracket that really would have showed this year. Alabama would have had to play either Ole Miss or Oklahoma State, 2 teams I think they would struggle with this year. You would have Notre Dame versus Utah in the first round. That would be a hell of a game. Winner of that would play Cincinnati. Georgia versus Pitt. I think Georgia would probably roll Pitt, but then they'd have to play Baylor.
Right.
And then you got Ohio State, Michigan State, and the winner of that takes on Michigan. And both of those, Michigan State already upset Michigan once. And that would be, who doesn't want to see that? Like, that would be a great 12-team playoff.
Yeah. The only thing that strikes me when you said that is you wouldn't want to see Notre Dame win and then them face Cincinnati because they got their doors blown off. I know you said the rematch wouldn't come into account, and maybe Notre Dame would find a better game plan for the second matchup with Cincinnati, but that was not a close game when they played back in October, I believe it was. But those games sound really good. Ole Miss has a tendency to give Alabama a tough time. Utah has been a very competitive team. We saw them beat Oregon a couple times, I believe, including the Pac-12 championship. So, like I said, personally, for me, I think it's a bit too big of a jump to go to 12, but maybe they should make the whole season a tournament. If you lose a game, you're out. You don't play anymore.
I know you said that game wasn't close, but it was a 24-13 game, and Cincinnati really had a good second quarter in that game where they just went up, and it was 17-0 before Notre Dame could blink because they had a couple of turnovers, they made a couple of bad plays, and Cincinnati took advantage, put 17 points up. But after that, Notre Dame outscored them 13-7. They didn't score another point until the fourth quarter. So I think it was a closer game than a lot of people think because it started out as a 17-0 game in the second quarter because Cincinnati ran away with it so quickly. But Notre Dame really just had a bad, it was about a bad 8-minute stretch is what they had in that game. And Cincinnati took advantage. So I see my guy here in the background. Buck, what's going on, buddy?
Just being an adult, I guess.
Did you have talk to text going while you were in the comments on YouTube?
No, Trip did though.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say because you had some stuff going on, and I just didn't. I thought maybe you were spiking the eggnog at the Christmas party or something.
Could have been.
It's part of being an adult. Hey, that's the adult juice, right?
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Nice. All right, so Buck, you're just in time. We're about to go through the top 10 here. And Graham, you've got your list ready. So why don't we start? Who you got at number 10?
Oh, we got my Buffalo Bills. They got off the schneid this week. Big time bounce back win over the Carolina Panthers. The very limping Carolina Panthers, led by Cam Newton and also sans any kind of kicking game. So they kind of got a bit of a break there. But I kind of saw what I needed to see after a couple of tough losses to the Patriots and then the Tampa Bay Bucks. Probably as tough a 2-game stretch as just about any team has gone through this year. They really showed a lot in that second half against the Bucks as well. They were kind of unfortunate to lose that game. Questionable pass interference or non-call, I should say, on Diggs in the end zone. Terrible. Obviously, Brady finds a way to win it in overtime. They're 8-6 right now, guys. They've got everything in front of them still. They've got a rematch against the Patriots at Foxborough on Sunday, and then I talked about a really tough 2-game stretch. They have a very easy 2-game stretch to end their season at home against the Falcons and the Jets. So if they could find a way to win on Sunday, I still love their chances to win this division and still be probably a top 2 or 3 seed in the conference. So even though they've had some major slip-ups this season, their main goals are still in front of them and they can still accomplish them.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with the Bills being at 10. I think that they're probably better even still right now, I think, than the Patriots. Having the Falcons and Jets after this Patriots team really boasts for, like you said, if they win this game, they're going to win this division. And so I don't hate you for having Buffalo at 10. I'm not going to yell at you too much, call you too much of a homer for having Buffalo at 10. But they do have New England, and it's in New England. And if they don't find a way to win this game, they're right back out of your top 10, even though they still probably win their final 2 and win a wild card spot. But they need to win this division. They need to have most of the teams come through Buffalo, at least until the NFC title game.
Yeah, it's a major home field advantage. Look, there's a couple other teams I definitely considered having in the spot. The Bengals, 49ers, not to spoil the rest of my top 10. It was definitely a toss-up. Chargers are another team that I considered there. Their coach, Brandon Staley, I've been kind of singing his praises all year, but he may have cost his team the game Thursday Night Football against the Kansas City Chiefs, going for it on 4th down a couple times unnecessarily. I believe they lost by 1 point. Yeah. There's also a scary situation with the tight end there going for the touchdown with the shaking arms, which I don't believe was from the weather, as Joe Buck suggested a little bit erroneously. So look, it's pretty tight there after you get past the first handful of teams or so. I just think Bills have enough going for them that I kind of like their chances actually this Sunday. They just
I
gotta
noticed
execute.
one of the teams you didn't think about putting in there was the Bears. Do you have them ranked at like 43rd?
Jeez.
So full disclosure, you keep dropping them down.
Yeah.
Full disclosure, it's been crazy at work, and I just kind of, crumpled together a top 10. I usually do a full 32. I will say this, and this is no disrespect, Combs, to your hometown team. If there was like an exciting ratings, a team that I'm interested in, Bears would definitely be 32. Are they the worst
Yeah.
team in the NFL?
They would
They're
still
not.
be 43rd, and I'm a Bears fan.
I mean, Justin Fields, you feel for this kid. He's taking a bunch of hits. He can't get a call to save his life.
Oh my God, that was brutal.
Yeah,
You shouldn't have faked the slide the first time. Get out of here.
Well, I mean,
Stop it, Buck.
Kenny Pickett has just ruined that for all quarterbacks going forward, right? With that little fake slide touchdown there against Wake
How about the
Forest.
one where 3 seconds after he threw it, the guy picked him up and suplexed him, and still no call?
It's unbelievable.
If that was
fine.
Patrick Mahomes or Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers, 72 flags would have flown in on the play. It would have been they would have had a 45-yard penalty and an extra 7 points given to the team of the quarterback that got hit. Give me a break.
Yeah, no, he's probably been maybe the second best rookie quarterback, obviously after Mac Jones. Surprisingly, Davis Mills has been okay too for the Texans, but he's just getting crushed too. Pretty weak quarterback class, I think, really for these rookies. But he's trying to do the best they can. They've got a pretty decent defense, but they're just they're miles away. They need a lot of help. They're going to have another top draft pick. They need to sign some free agents. They need to figure it out. They might have a new general manager. Ryan Pace has been there for a while. They're almost certainly going to have a new head coach. So it's going to be a bit of a makeover edition, Chicago Bears edition.
I hope so. Please bring on Eric Bieniemy.
Buck's got some breaking news, maybe.
Yeah, some breaking news. The Chicago Bears and Matt Nagy have.
I'm just going to go ahead and mute him right now so I don't have to listen to what he's about to say because I know where he's going with this. And I'm not going to listen to it, Buck. I'm not going to listen to it. Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace are both on their way out the door, and you suck. Who's at number 9, Graham?
So number 9, we got the Indianapolis Colts. This team's really been on a real roll after losing, I believe, their first 3 games. They probably have the best running. Well, they have the best running back in the NFL, Jonathan Taylor. Certainly an MVP candidate. Peter King kind of made his case for that in his column on Monday morning in America or whatever it's called. I really like what I've seen out of this team, and I think Taylor is the perfect complement to Carson Wentz. Is Carson Wentz the kind of guy I want throwing 45 passes a game? No, because probably about 3 or 4 of them will end up in the arms of the other team. He's pretty turnover prone, but he's been able to avoid those major mistakes. The defense is looking better. Remember a couple of years ago when Matt Eberflus, the defensive coordinator, was being named as a possible head coaching candidate? We haven't heard that much over the last year and a half or so, but he's got these guys flying around. They've gotten enough out of the passing game. Pascal and some of the other guys come to mind, Pittman as well. I think this is a tough team. Frank Reich, tough as nails. He led the Buffalo Bills to the greatest comeback in NFL history. So this guy knows a thing or two about being battle tested. So they're in a really good spot. Now, they did lose a couple of head-to-head matchups against the Tennessee Titans, but they could still win this division, guys. They're only 1 game behind. They just kind of need Tennessee to falter another time or two. But they're going to be a dangerous wild card team at the least, I think.
And I'm okay with you with your Colts at 9. I'm not going to beat you up too much here. I do expect, though, that if they win this game this weekend, the Indianapolis Colts need to be in your top 5 because I know that they had a tough go to start the season. I know that, but not only that loss against the Buccaneers is one of the ones where they played their butts off and they were right there. I mean, it was a 38-31 game. They were right there with them. But since, losing that last game to the Titans, they beat the hell out of the Jets. They beat the hell out of the Jaguars, as they should. But then they beat the hell out of the Bills in Buffalo.
Yep.
And then what they did in New England last week in New England was impressive to me. It was in Indy, but it was still impressive to see what they did because of how well the Patriots have been playing, the high that the Patriots were running on, coming out of a bye week, which you usually don't. The Patriots don't lose coming out of bye weeks, right? Bill Belichick
No.
doesn't lose coming out of bye week, and he got his butt taken to him. So I'm okay with the Colts at 9. I just think that if they win their game this weekend, if they go out there this weekend and they beat the Cardinals, the Indianapolis Colts absolutely need to be a top 5 team in your power rankings.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Actually, there are some other media publications that have them as high as 3. So you're right. I'm not quite there yet, but you think about some of their losses. You talked about the Tampa Bay loss.
Yeah.
The second Tennessee game at home was terrible. If you think about that Wentz interception in the end zone, and then the second one in overtime, that pretty much coughed the game away.
It was still only a 3-point loss.
Yeah, only a 3-point loss. You're right. And then also the Ravens game on Monday Night Football, that they had that game. I think they were up 23-9, 25-9 in the fourth quarter, guys, and they still found a way to blow that game. So they could easily be a 10-11 win team. But I think they could be inching a little bit higher up these rankings if they find a way to win against the Cardinals. Two teams kind of going in opposite directions right now.
They haven't really lost a game by more. Yeah, and they haven't lost a game by more than 11 points all year either. So they're in every game they're playing.
Very competitive team. As is the next team I have at number 8 to kind of play host for a minute here. The team just right ahead of them, they could see them in their rearview mirror, the Tennessee Titans. They took a tough loss against the Pittsburgh, I almost called them the Penguins. I haven't even had the eggnog yet. Steelers. Ryan Tannehill really kind of coughed this game up. I talked about Wentz doing the same thing. Tannehill, I really expected to see him elevate his game, but he's really not that kind of quarterback. He's a quarterback that needs a good running game. He needs Derrick Henry back in the worst way, and he needs 25 to 30 pass attempts per game, or even less than that. He's a guy who can make things happen with his legs. He's not really he's somewhere in that middle tier quarterback level, so somewhere in the teens, I would say. And he's prone to making some bonehead plays. And that's what he did late in that game against Pittsburgh, in a game they really should have won. And that would have given them that little bit of extra breathing room over the Colts. Look, they probably only need to win one of their final games to probably win that division. 2 would definitely do it. If they could get King Henry back, I still think this team could be a real force in the AFC, which is a bit of a weak conference this year. But he's such a big part of their identity. I just don't know how far they'll go if he's not able to come back soon.
So I wouldn't say the AFC is weak by any means. It is very competitive. I mean, just the top 2-3 teams that were like the last year, the Bills and the Chiefs, and we could throw in the Colts in there too. They have kind of come down a little bit, and everybody else has kind of elevated their game a tad bit. But just to add to your Ryan Tannehill thing, he doesn't need King Henry. He just needs some receivers, because the Tennessee Titans receiving core is riddled with like injuries. I think AJ Brown should be coming off of IR this week to play the 49ers, so that will definitely help. And Julio Jones is back on IR now. So, I mean, that's their biggest downfall, is they don't have any receivers that are healthy. And of course, they also lost their tight end in the offseason, and they didn't replace him with anybody. So,
and they better wake up going into these next 2 weeks, because you've got the Niners and the Dolphins coming up, and both of these teams are playing really good football right now. So they could both sneak up and bite you, and all of a sudden you find yourself not even in the playoffs, let alone not winning your division.
They'll lose the next 3.
Yeah, good point by you, Buck. Kind of a bit of an oversight by me also with the receiving threats there. They actually do use 3 tight ends, Michael Pruitt, Anthony Firkser, and I'm snoozing on the other guy, Swaim. They actually use all 3 of those guys. There's very few teams that use 3 tight ends. I think they all have over 10 catches, which is pretty rare.
But are those 3 as good as Jonnu Smith, though?
No, not even close, but
right.
They kind of fit into this team, and they use them in different ways. Pruitt's a pretty athletic guy. He's probably the most athletic out of those 3. 100%. But I'm going to move on to the number 7 team, and this is a team that's kind of been tumbling down quite a bit since a couple weeks ago, last time I saw you guys. They've lost a couple in a row, including a fairly embarrassing fashion to the Detroit Lions last week. It's the Arizona Cardinals. The troubling trend with this team is Kyler Murray and his chemistry, or lack thereof, with some of his receivers, especially AJ Green. I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but we saw this a couple months back when they played the Green Bay Packers, and they blew that game on the last play when AJ Green just stopped on his route as soon as the defender put his hands on him. There was a couple other times over the last couple of weeks that he was looking for him, and Green either cut in the wrong way, or he stopped on the route, or he kind of gave up on it. I don't get this, guys. Green's a veteran. He should know the playbook. He should know the plays. There seems to be something missing there. And, that's not the reason they lost necessarily. There was a lot of different turnovers and mistakes that they made in that game. But I think this is a team that, Combs, you were really high on them, and I get it. They were playing great.
I'm still high.
And then, I was right there with you. And then they've started to show a different side to them the last, couple weeks. And it's a little bit troubling, especially when you think about the division could be slipping away. They're tied with the Rams right now.
And I think that this is one of those times where you look at their record and you're just like, oh, man, they're slipping a little bit. But I'm going to pump the brakes just a little bit here. So they did lose that game, that tight game versus the Rams. It was a big game. That was a tough one to lose to the Rams because now the Rams, are now tied with you for the division lead after their win yesterday. But then you looked ahead to the Colts and Cowboys coming up, and you completely forgot you had to play the Lions. And it was a trap game. I mean, it really was. It was a game where you go into a lot from what I'm hearing. From what I'm hearing is that DeAndre Hopkins, if this was a game against the Rams or if this was a game, against the Colts or against the Cowboys, he would have played in this game. But it was the Lions. So he took the week off. So you don't have your number one weapon. Your running back is hurt. Your quarterback is still playing.
Are you done pumping the Cardinals fans, Combs? Are you done pumping them up?
The Cardinals are still
suck.
the best team in the NFC.
No, they're not.
Oh, okay, Buck. So tell me why the Lions should be 11-7 and the Lions should be the number one team in the NFC. Go ahead. Come on.
I didn't say that.
Smart
guy.
Guy.
What happened last year to the Arizona Cardinals? What they were like 8-3 and they dropped the final games of their stretch to even missed the playoffs. This is what Cliff Kingsbury does, Combs. The last 6-7 weeks of the season, he loses every game. Combs, there are 3 games left. And the trend is going to continue. He's going to lose 5 games in a row, and they're going to miss the playoffs again after starting 9-0 or whatever it was. They're out, Combs.
Hey, Dan Campbell's got those Lions flying around. You were all over them at the beginning of the season, Buck. It didn't look great for about the first 12 games or so, but hey, they beat the Vikings and they beat the brakes off the Cardinals. I'm for Dan Campbell getting the second season. I think you said it before. You talk about a guy you run through a wall for. He might have some weird metaphors as far as biting your kneecaps off and stuff like that. But
it's called the ozone part of the field, isn't it, or something?
I would have fired him when he cried during the press conference.
Hey, this is an emotional guy. I would love to play for this guy. Look, Lions are far away, but he's got them playing hard still, and that's kind of cool.
The Lions are closer than the Cardinals are to winning a Super Bowl.
Oh my God, you're gonna get Combs to walk off again.
Hopefully. I'm gonna punch him in his throat when I see him.
Make sure you bring a footstool.
The good thing for Cardinals fans, I will
That's
say,
what I'm gonna hit you in the throat with.
Red Sea Nation or whatever, is they could still figure it out over these last 3 games. If they
can
can,
they though, versus the Colts,
I think they're gonna lose I think they're gonna lose to the Colts. I think they're gonna beat the Cowboys, and then I think that they'll finally win another home game in the final game of the season against the Seahawks. Because the Seahawks are just terrible. They play great on the road. This team is 7-1 on the road. I think they can beat the Cowboys on the road. I do think that they might drop this game this week to the Colts, though, and finish the season at 12-5.
Well, them not getting the number 1 seed might actually be an advantage for them because of how much they have struggled at home, which is really weird to see. Their points per game, their margin of victory, so many different things. This was their first road loss, I believe, in Motown. Yeah. So a bit of a weird thing to see.
And now it also helped with Kyler Murray getting an extra game under his belt too, because he has missed like 4 or 5 games, hasn't he? So, he was my MVP pick for the first month or 2 of the season. I think he's missed too many times. There's too many other good candidates for him to really. He'll get some votes, but he's not going to win the thing.
They just went to sleep versus the Lions. That's all that happened there.
Okay, we'll see.
Yeah, they had a chance to wake up, but it didn't quite happen in time. So number 6, another team in the NFC, a lot of good teams in the NFC this year, the Dallas Cowboys. You could make the argument that they could be a little higher. Sure. You could make that. I didn't have as much time to devote to these rankings as usual. Sometimes during the broadcast, I'm just like, you know what? Maybe I could have had them a bit higher. I think they kind of they're right where they belong. We haven't really seen the Dak Prescott that we really are used to seeing for an extended period of time. They're not really winning because of him. They're winning a lot of times because of some of the plays the running backs are making, and the defense has showed up. Micah Parsons is a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. Now he's a rookie, so he almost certainly will win Defensive Rookie of the Year. But they've had some other guys come through and make plays. Now the NFC East is pretty much theirs already. I don't know if they've officially clinched. I think they just need one more win and or losses by WFT.
They have clinched a playoff spot, so I'd assume
the
they
Eagles.
clinched the East.
Okay. Yeah. I'm just not sure how far this team will go in the playoffs. If they have what it takes to win those tight playoff games. Dak Prescott doesn't have a ton of experience in that regard. I really like this team. They're a lot better than I thought they would be. Could I have them at, say, maybe as high as 4 or so? I probably could, but that's where I have them. So make your own damn power rankings.
I think 6 is good, honestly. Honestly, I think 6 is good, and I would maybe even put the Cardinals over them and maybe the Colts, honestly.
Don't you go easy. What? Don't you go easy on him, Buck?
Yeah.
This is the number 2 ranked team, which means you probably have I'm assuming, I haven't seen the ranking yet, but I'm assuming you have the Patriots and the Buccaneers ahead of them. Buccaneers aren't playing as good of football as the Cowboys are right now, and they beat the Patriots. And this team is 10-4, and they're the number 2 seed in the NFC. How are they 6?
It's the power rankings, Coleman. It's week to week.
It's just kind of how I see things. I think the Bucs are a better team than the Patriots. The Pats, I don't know. They're in a better position, I would say, in their conference. A lot of times you're splitting hairs with these rankings. I like the Pats defense a little bit better than the Cowboys. So it wasn't like a unanimous. You should have just
told me that, Graham. You should have said it was the way that you see. The way you see things is great for a blind man. It's great.
Well, you guys are great looking guys. Let me just say that.
for the radio, right? So
you got it. Yeah.
So let's jump up to number 5. You do have the Pats, and you have the Bucs at 4, and the Rams at 3. I feel those 3 teams you can pretty much intertwine any way you want there, and you wouldn't be wrong. The Patriots had the most upside, I think.
Yeah, I mean, Mac Jones, he's been really solid as a rookie quarterback. I don't want to give him too much credit because they've really been relying on that run game. Matthew Judon has been a great signing for them.
You don't want to give him credit because he's a Patriot.
Oh, I think a lot of people were singing his praises even after the Buffalo game where he threw 3 passes. Look, he was the 5th quarterback selected, and he looks like he's going to have a great career. I'm by no means going to take anything away from him. You know, if you think about the Alabama quarterbacks recently selected, Tua Tagovailoa, Jalen Hurts, he looks like he's the best out of those 3. And really the best Alabama quarterback coming out for quite some time. It's become a bit of a factory in that regard. They don't really ask him to do a whole lot of tricky stuff, but he's a rookie. They have a strong run game. They have a really good defense. They always have good special teams. So he's got to manage the game, but we've seen him make some big time throws. Obviously a bit of a setback against the Indianapolis Colts there on Saturday night, but they've got a big game against the Buffalo Bills. The winner of this game is more than likely assured of winning the AFC East, and probably not. They'll be in the mix for that first round bye and the number 1 seed. Buck sporting in a couple different hats. Where does your loyalty lie?
Buck doesn't have any loyalty. He roots for like 19 different
Kansas
teams.
City Chiefs. Okay, and then Kansas State,
Kansas, and
alma mater.
I think he's got a Kentucky hat on. I also think he's got the Cowboys. He's got a Packers flag in the background. Buck just likes whoever's winning.
I had Detroit Lions underwear on right now too. I'm pretty excited about it.
You could not.
Those ones are stained like crazy.
Okay. We believe you.
All right, and then coming in at number 2, you do have the Kansas City Chiefs.
Your Kansas City Chiefs.
My
Yes.
Kansas City Chiefs.
You know, I'm hopping aboard this train. It's been churning on the track. 7 wins in a row. Guys, this defense is lights out. Steve Spagnuolo has really got them punching the ball out, forcing turnovers. And they were a little bit fortunate to win that game over the Chargers. I already talked about Brandon Staley and some of his questionable decisions, on 4th down. It looks great when you get it. It doesn't look so good when you're unable to get it. But Mahomes had to make some throws in this game. He's been questionable almost the entire season. If you think about the number of games, his quarterback rating is in the 70s, which is just less than mediocre. So he's still one of the most talented throwers of the football. I still think he could figure it out, but he's got to stop forcing these footballs into really tight windows, because a lot of times that's what's leading to the interceptions, or he'll throw a laser when he could really use a bit more touch. So he's still a relatively inexperienced guy if you think about his amount of time in the league, but he's very experienced when you think about the amount of playoff games and championship games and a couple of Super Bowls already. So I think he needs to kind of figure it out. I still think they're missing that weapon on the opposite side of Tyreek Hill. Mecole Hardman is sometimes that guy. We've seen Demarcus Robinson, although I believe he's on a different team right now. Might be aging myself a bit there, but Kelsey and Tyreek Hill are the two main weapons on this team, and I think they're just missing that third kind of X factor, if you will. But if the defense keeps playing like this, they're going to find a way to outscore teams, because they're playing at a really high level right now.
Yeah, I mean, they are definitely doing very, very well. And as a Chiefs fan, I'm hoping Josh Gordon is that guy once he comes off the COVID list.
Yes.
You would think with like all the weed he smokes, that he would be like immune to COVID. But like it is what it is. But hopefully once the playoffs come around, they do find that third receiver, or maybe Clyde Edwards will come out and be the running back that we all want him to be. Maybe that would help as well. But
he don't smoke more weed than me or Graham do, so it's the same. It's the same. And listen, the Kansas City Chiefs, the only problem I have with them being at number 2 is I think people see, yes, they've won, what is it, 7 straight games now, 8 straight games, something like that.
I believe it's 7, yeah.
The other than the Raiders games, take the Raiders games out of it, they haven't been scoring a ton of points. And I'm still worried about this Kansas City Chiefs offense when they play a top tier defense come playoff time. That's when I don't trust the Kansas City Chiefs, because they put up 48 and 41 against the Oakland Raiders, or the Las Vegas Raiders, I should say. But other than that, they won a game by scoring 20, another one by scoring 19, another one by scoring 17. Like, they're not scoring a ton of points on offense. They're not doing what we're used to seeing the Kansas City Chiefs do. Now, they did put up 34 against this Chargers defense this last weekend, but a lot of people score 30 points on the Chargers defense. So
right. So I don't want to get
as impressive to me. That's all.
I don't want to get in too much talk
Fair
here,
enough.
Holmes, but defense wins championships, and when you're holding up opponents to under 10 points and you only scored 2 touchdowns in a game, you're going to win a lot of games. And
I'm
when we
okay
look
with
at
that, but you're not going to see those types of. You're not going to see a lot of teams in the playoffs that you're going to be able to hold to under 10 points. So that's the problem.
Every team in the playoff picture right now, you can hold underneath 10 points because they have.
But they held the Giants
Titans
down to 17. They held the Packers to 7 without freaking Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
It's not one of those things where you're extremely impressed with what their defense has done. It's great. They beat the Giants. Great. They beat the Raiders. Great. They beat the Broncos. Great. They beat the Chargers. They mixed in the Cowboys and the Packers wins there. But again, the Packers win without Aaron Rodgers. Isn't that impressive? Okay, me, you, and Graham could put together a game plan that could beat the Packers without Aaron Rodgers.
That's a false statement.
I'd love that challenge. I'd love to put together some plays. Certainly, honestly, the Cowboys game is probably the most impressive for me out of those kind of muddy, ugly games, if you will. They really held Dak Prescott in check. They intercepted him a few times. They sacked him several times. So they only scored 19 points in that game. Mahomes didn't look good at all, but that's the type of game they could win. They could get back to the Super Bowl winning games like that. And if you look at the other teams in the AFC that could be there, Titans have struggled offensively. We've seen the Patriots struggle at times offensively. We've seen the Buffalo Bills struggle. So they can definitely get back there riding the backs of their defense, which is a little bit weird. And we didn't think we'd be saying that back in August and September, but it's happening. Spagnuolo is a very experienced defensive coordinator, and he's got the schemes that are working right now.
And then coming out number 1, you have the Green Bay Packers, of course, the best team in the NFL, number 1 AFC or NFC team, 11-3.
Yeah, I didn't do a lot of hesitating here. They've knocked down all the obstacles in front of them, really. If you think about that debacle in week 1 against the New Orleans Saints, that seems like centuries ago. You take out that other game against the Kansas City Chiefs when Jordan No Love played, they only have one other loss, and it was an overtime loss against the Vikings, and a game they definitely could have won. Darnell Savage wasn't able to squeeze the ball when he went up and got it against Kirk Cousins there. So just a very solid season. Joe Barry's got the defense playing at a high level. Rodgers seems happy. He still seems like he needs to get a bit more sleep and maybe a haircut. I can't really talk. Mine's getting a little bit long myself, but the running game's looking good. This looks like a team firing on all cylinders. All they need to do is get back to the NFC Championship game and find a way to win it, because they've been there the last couple of years. So they've been knocking on the doors.
They're going to be the number 1 team in the NFC. They're going to get back to the NFC title game, and they're going to lose it like they do every single freaking year. That's what the Green Bay Packers do.
Yep.
So I just can't wait for it, because I'm going to let Torrey have his glory days and Wyatt have their glory days all the way up to the NFC title game. And then I'm going to watch them cry in their Cheerios.
Well, just don't pee in their Cheerios.
Oh, I'm going to do that too.
Well, I'll definitely be crying then.
That is so gross. All right, Graham. As always, man, thank you for joining us for your power rankings. I'm sorry I didn't get to talk a little college football guys with you like earlier, but whatever. Go Army, go tonight, right? Isn't Army playing tonight? I don't know. I can't remember.
Army is playing right now.
Yeah.
Armed Forces Bowl.
Yeah.
All right, Graham, tell people where they can find you in your show.
You got it. So at Bus Wallace on Instagram and Twitter as well. Been a little bit slow with the baseball blogs, but you can usually find those there on jaysjournal.com, also bellyupsports.com under the MLB tab. Going to have some stuff coming out in the New Year's. I've been kind of really busy with the Christmas season, but stick and stay with us, because we're going to have some more content coming out for you in 2022.
Hey, Graham, in 2022, you and I need to get on and have a segment where we talk about what's going on with Major League Baseball on this lockout and how they're going to hopefully end this thing soon.
Yeah, I have some ideas for sure about some things that they can maybe consider. They haven't contacted me to be part of these negotiations. I'm a little disappointed in that, but
you and I should
I'll let
both
you
be in those negotiations.
Because we have some unique outside the box thoughts on those.
Yeah,
I think
let's do this. I think in a couple weeks here, after I get back from vacation, we should do a baseball segment. You and I.
Awesome. I'm on board.
All right, man.
Oh, always good to see you guys. Hey, Merry Christmas to you and your families.
Merry Christmas to you,
man.
Happy holidays.
All right,
Good.
So we are back. I was waiting for you to take control. I forgot that I was leading the show. My bad. So we're going to get to a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk some more NFL, get into some of the games that happened last night, what's going on there, and we will be right back in 2 minutes. And we are back. It's your boy BC Brandon Combs, along with Michael Buckheister. Buck, it's been a night, man. Had the first half hour to myself. Got to talk some college football playoff scenarios. I still think college football missed the bus without the 12-team playoff, especially with the scenarios they were going to run. But
12's too many, I think. 8.
No, look, here's why. Okay, Buck. So maybe you didn't hear the first, half hour. I know you're busy at the family Christmas party and all, but in the 12-team playoff, the top 4 conference champions get buys, right? So that takes Georgia out of the top 4. That means Alabama, Michigan, Cincy, and Baylor are the top 4. Those teams get buys.
What about the 5th conference?
Teams ranked 5 through 8 would host teams ranked 9 through 12 in on-campus games in the first round. So that means you would have Ole Miss versus Oklahoma State. The winner of that gets to play Alabama. Ole Miss almost beat Alabama, if people remember, a few weeks back. Then you have Georgia playing Pitt. That one's probably the worst of the 4 matchups in the first round.
Yeah, I don't know much about Pitt.
But Pitt might be able to give them a game, but I think Georgia still walks away with that one. But they would go on to play Baylor. And then you have Notre Dame versus Utah. That would be a great game. And say Utah pulls off the upset against Notre Dame, they go on to play Cincinnati, or Notre Dame gets their rematch against Cincinnati. And then you have Ohio State versus Michigan, the 7-10 game. And the winner of that goes on to play Michigan. Michigan State already beat Michigan once this year. Ohio State lost to Michigan this year already. I mean, that would have been a great 12-team playoff. That would have been a great bracket.
This is the only year that a 12-team bracket would have actually made sense. Most years after about the 8th or 9th team, there's a big fall off. Let's just be honest about it.
I don't know that there is, though, especially in college football, where there seems to be a lot more parity year after year.
I mean, maybe in 2025, when the NCAA is officially gone, we'll see that 64 March Madness style tournament right to make everybody happy.
Yeah,
the more the better.
Yeah.
Right.
But anyway, we had some NFL stuff go on last night. Buck, in Tuesday night NFL. Yeah, we'll get into a little bit of that later on as we go about why the NFL is playing games on Tuesday night. But the Rams beat the Seahawks, and the Rams are now tied for the division lead. Who's going to win the NFC West?
So when it comes down to it, many people are going to say the Atlanta Falcons because they got the, quote, the easier schedule, right? And they got the better record. No. Guys,
you mean the Arizona Cardinals? You said the Atlanta Falcons.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I meant the Arizona Cardinals. I mean, the Arizona Cardinals right now are sitting at 10-4, but they're on a 2-game losing streak. And then they play the Colts this, I believe, a Sunday or a Saturday night game, right? And then they play the Cowboys on a Sunday afternoon game. And then they play at home versus the Seahawks to end the season. I can very well possibly see the Seahawks losing the last 5 games of the season, Combs, because they've already lost 2 in a row, and I see them losing the next 3. Because whether we want to admit it or not, the Seahawks are still a good team. They just aren't there on the win-loss record. I mean, Russ missed like 6 games with that finger injury, but they are still a good team. They got a good defense, even with Jamal Adams out for the season, and they will give them a run for their money in that final game of the season, and it's a division game, like I was saying. Now the LA Rams, the team that we saw last night that beat the Seahawks, was 20-10. They are on a 3 or 4 game winning streak as well, and their schedule is a hell of a lot easier. They play the Vikings at the Vikings, which we don't know which Vikings team is going to show up. Talk about the bipolarness of the NFL. The Vikings are one of those bipolar teams, but I think they'll beat the Vikings. I think they'll beat the Ravens, and then I think they'll lose to the Minnesota Vikings, the San Francisco 49ers to end the year. So by default, that gives the LA Rams a 1-game advantage in the win column. So I'm picking the LA Rams to win this division, and the Cardinals are probably going to be a 6 seed, Combs.
I don't disagree with you. I think that the Arizona Cardinals are one of that team that might lose this week to the Colts, while I think that the Rams are going to go ahead and win their game. And I think the Rams win out and the Cardinals lose. one of their next 3, which will be this weekend against the Colts, and I think that the Rams win this division. I think that the Cardinals finish as, like you said, they're either going to be a 5 or a 6 seed. But I don't think that phases the Cardinals, because I think that the Cardinals play better and they feel more comfortable for whatever reason on the road. I know a lot of people are like, oh yeah, okay, because they want to go on the road, like Soup Boss is saying, right? This team wants to go on the road. They don't want to play at home. I just think they're more comfortable there. I don't think they're as comfortable for whatever reason in their home stadium as they are on the road. So I'm not saying that they would rather play on the road, but I'm saying that they may have a better chance on the road. And so I'm okay with where the Cardinals are at. If you look at the Arizona Cardinals and who they would be playing in the first round, like say if the standings stay the way that they are, they'll be playing the Bucks in the first round in Tampa Bay. Right. And that's a game that the Cardinals can win. That's a place where the Cardinals can go and that defense can slow down Tampa Bay. I mean, Tampa Bay's shown this season that when they play tough teams, tough defenses, they can slow down. I think that the Arizona Cardinals can look at the blueprint of what the New Orleans Saints did this past weekend, because their defense is just every bit as good as the New Orleans Saints defense is. They look at that blueprint and they can absolutely slow the Tampa Bay Buccaneers down.
So I think the Cardinals Bucks game would be a great first round matchup for both teams. I think they match up well on both sides of the ball. What I would be worried about is them playing a division foe.
That's my guy, Buck. That's my guy.
I always got your back, brother. Always
For
got
those
your back.
of you listening on the radio right now, Buck asked Michelle if I can still go. She said, haha, depends on what he got me for Christmas. And Buck said he's good for 3 years. Look at your finger. You damn Skippy, son.
Damn Skippy. So going back to my point here, I mean, like right now, what the Arizona Cardinals are probably sitting at 5 seed, if I'm not mistaken. And let's say they were to stay at that 5 seed, and then the Rams stay at that 4 seed. I don't think, because the Rams have beat the Cardinals twice this year, already, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it is hard to beat a team 3 times in a year. So I think the Cardinals almost want to be a 5 seed, almost just like what Supas was saying, so they can play the Rams again. But if they were to fall to a 6 or even possibly a 7 seed somehow, some way, I think there's still a possibility they can drop that low. I don't think they match up good versus the Cowboys. I don't think they match up good against the Green Bay Packers. Like I don't have faith in the Arizona Cardinals in the postseason, because for one, they haven't been there with this current regime that they have, right? And number 2, I mean, the facts don't lie here, but Cliff Kingsbury always falls off at the tail end of the season, right? All they had to do last year was win one of their final 5 games, and they would have made the playoffs. They couldn't do that. They couldn't beat some of the worst teams in the NFL. And it's much like the Raiders syndrome over there. Maybe it's a West Coast thing. Maybe the West Coast team is just like, hey, it's getting cold. We just don't want to play anymore. So we're just going to, forfeit the last 5 games.
Yeah, but that's why I think they go to Tampa Bay and they can, be okay if they play in Tampa Bay. You go to a warm weather state, you go to a warm weather stadium, and you get to play in an element which you're used to, right? It's not indoors per se, but it's still warm weather, and you're still going to be happy playing there. I think the Arizona Cardinals can do it. I do agree with you, though. I think that the Rams are going to win this division. Is Matt Stafford, though? This is something that really intrigues me. Is Matt Stafford the most underrated quarterback in NFL history?
I mean, on the surface, you have to think so, just because he has been on that shit show of a team, the Detroit Lions, for what? 8 years or whatever he is like he's been on. But then he goes to the Rams, and what? The first 8 or 9 games, it was like, oh my God, this guy's the MVP, best quarterback in the league. But then he's kind of come back down to reality aka he got hurt, but now he's getting back healthy again. So I don't know if he is the most underrated quarterback in the league, just because we all knew that he had talent. That is why the Detroit Lions held on to him for as long as they did, because let's face it, if it was a Daniel Jones doing the same thing that Matthew Stafford did, he would be gone. If it was Sam Darnold, he would be gone, right? Hell, even Jimmy G, right? They would be gone. So clearly the organization of the shit show Detroit Lions knew that he had some type of talent. Now, did we think it was a Super Bowl caliber talent? I think so, in somehow, some way. But I think the most undervalued, underrated quarterback in all of the NFL, honestly, it's probably Deshaun Watson. Yes, he is making $100 million or $120 million, but we don't understand the greatness that Deshaun Watson is, I don't think. I mean, heck, Matthew Stafford's $100 million quarterback too, right?
Yeah, but Deshaun Watson gets a lot of. I mean, look, nobody ever said, "Hey, if you're going to trade Matthew Stafford, you're going to have to give up 4 first-round draft picks."
Right.
You know what I mean? And so, I think Deshaun Watson gets the respect that he's due. I don't think Matthew Stafford does. And now we're seeing what Matthew Stafford can do with a good run game, with a good offensive line, and a good wide receiving core, and a defense behind him. You're seeing what he can do. And now all of a sudden he's on a team that's 10-4, that's poised to win the NFC West.
Right.
And make a deep run into the postseason. This Rams team, would it surprise you if on Super Bowl Sunday we were watching the Rams play football?
Not at all, because we talked with Luke G last night, and we see the Rams trying to buy themselves a Super Bowl by getting Von Miller, right? And they picked up Marcus Peters a couple years ago, right? I mean, like, they are trying to buy all this talent, and they don't even have a draft pick till 2024, right? That's worth a thing. So would it surprise me? No. Would it shock me that they're not in it? No, either. Just because, I mean, it's just like the Rams are a team that's like right down the center. Like, you expect them to would be good, but it's not. But it wouldn't surprise you if they lost in the first round either. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, I guess it does. But look, I think Matt Stafford and this team and what they've got and what they've got built and what they have on the defensive side of the ball, especially.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, this team here can absolutely run the table in the NFC. They can beat any team that they play. They can go into Lambeau and they can beat a Green Bay Packers team. So I don't know if he's the most underrated quarterback in NFL history, but he's got to be pretty damn close.
I mean, the only possible other quarterback I could think of that is most underrated, maybe like an Andrew Luck. Because, just because his career was cut so short.
I was thinking more like a Warren Moon. Because when you talk about quarterbacks all time, nobody ever really talks about Warren Moon, and that guy was freaking amazing.
I mean, you can say the same thing about Randall Cunningham too, right? I don't know. But going back to the Rams a little bit here, for them to win the division and make some noise in the playoffs, these next 3 weeks are huge for Odell Beckham Jr. Just because, he has been on the team now for 4 or 5 weeks, I think. So he should definitely starting to be building that connection with Matthew Stafford, the underrated quarterback that we all think he kind of is, right? And, they should be finding their groove. Yes, they have 3 wins in a row over the Jaguars, Cardinals, and Seahawks. But these next 2 games are the most critical for the LA Rams if they want to make some noise in the playoffs. And that means they got to get Odell Beckham Jr. acclimated into this offense. He probably needs to get 15 touches.
I think he's already acclimated into this offense. He had 2 touchdowns last week.
Yeah, but like, he needs to be like a focal point. Because yes, we all know what Cooper Kupp can do, and people are going to probably double team Cooper Kupp for the next 3 games and all through the playoffs. Odell Beckham Jr. has to be able to look at Matthew Stafford, give the little hand signal shake, and they both know what they're going to do. So he definitely needs to be that focal point. Maybe if he can be the focal point so much for these next 3 weeks that double team starts to rotate over to Odell Beckham Jr., and then Cooper Kupp can be the great receiver that he is.
Right. There's another game yesterday, Buck, and that was the Eagles and the Washington football team. The Eagles won this game, bringing them to 7-7.
Yeah.
Putting them second place in the NFC East. Are the Eagles going to make the playoffs? Right now, they're the 8th seed.
Right now, they are the 8th seed, and they are 7-7 on the season. And looking at their schedule moving forward here, they do play the Giants, the football team, and Cowboys again. So 2 very winnable games. And heck, I think Combs. No, they cannot win the division because the Cowboys are So they lost to the Cowboys, and I'm not for sure if the tiebreaker is, but if the Cowboys lose out and the Eagles win out, they will both be 10-7 on the season.
And they'll be 1-1 head-to-head.
Yeah, so I don't know how that tiebreaker would pan out, but I definitely don't see them winning out. I see them winning probably one more game on the season, making them 8-9. So I think if you are 8-9 in the NFC, you are not going to get into the playoffs.
Yeah.
So if the Eagle fans want to make the playoffs, you have to beat the Giants. You have to beat the Washington football team and just play competitive versus the Cowboys in that Week 18 game. So, no, I don't think they make the playoffs because of the back-to-back schedule versus Washington, because I think Washington beats them.
And Alpha Rob, I see your comment there in the section. I will get to that when we get to Shop Talk for sure. We'll definitely talk about that come Shop Talk time because that's a good question, Alpha Rob. So stay tuned. We'll get to that here in just about 15 minutes here when we get to Shop Talk. But I don't know if the Eagles can make the playoffs. I don't want to count them out because I think Minnesota is going to lose 1 or 2 more games. And so the Philadelphia Eagles, if they win out, they control their own destiny. However, it could come down to that game against the Cowboys. And if the Cowboys already have that division locked up, they've already got their playoff seed locked up, it might be a different story. However, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 teams that have the same record as the Cowboys right now. So barring a major meltdown, the Cowboys are going to need that game. And you look at a team that's right now staying with the Philadelphia Eagles, and that's the New Orleans Saints. And the New Orleans Saints have the Dolphins, the Panthers, and the Falcons left. Those are 3 games that the New Orleans Saints should win.
Yeah.
And so if you have one slip up, you're in trouble and you may miss out on these playoffs. And so I'm gonna say no. I'm gonna say they don't get in. I'm gonna say the New Orleans Saints get in.
Well, heck, then I mean, if we want to look that far down, the Washington football team is right there as well. Yes, I know they are 6-8 and they need help to make it in, right? But if they beat the Cowboys this week on Sunday Night Football, I think they will have that momentum and going, and then they will beat the Eagles and beat the Giants, and that will put them at 9-8. I have more faith in the Washington football team of making the playoffs than I do the Philadelphia Eagles, like at this point. But yeah, I do agree with you. I think the Saints make it.
Yeah, I don't know if the Eagles will get there. I don't know. I do think that the Saints make it just because of the schedule and the way that the schedule lines up. So I'm going to say that they don't make it. The other thing I wanted to ask here, would a playoff berth actually be bad for the Eagles' future?
Oh, I mean, obviously when you make the playoffs, you go into the next season with like a confidence of like expecting to make the playoffs. And then you always kind of play better when you're on a winning streak and you have that extra game under under your belt. And I think the Eagles team as a whole, they are pretty close to being right there. You know, they are missing. I don't even know what they're missing like at this point, because I think they have their quarterback of the future, even though I'm not a huge fan of him for whatever reason. Philadelphia loves him. He is playing well. He puts up pretty good numbers, right? But their receiving core is just lackadaisical, not very good. So if they were to make the playoffs, I don't see how it could hurt them. But if they miss the playoffs, I don't see how that would help them more than making the playoffs. To waffle around the answer, it doesn't matter one way or the other. But I want to say, like, every time a team makes the playoffs, the next year you have a little bit of swagger under your belt.
Yeah, and the reason why I pose this question is because I feel like if the Eagles make the playoffs, they're kind of going to be okay with going with the quarterbacks that they have being Jalen Hurts and Gardner Minshew. And that's where I think it hurts the franchise for the future. Because if all of a sudden they're in the playoffs, they think that Jalen Hurts and Gardner Minshew are doing what they're supposed to be doing, and they're finding ways to win football games. But that's not what's going to happen. That's not what needs to happen for this franchise. They need to find a quarterback. They don't have one in Jalen Hurts. And they don't look, I know Supas's going to kill me for this statement, but they don't have one in Gardner Minshew either. You know, both of these guys are better suited to be backup quarterbacks that only need to come in when their starter is hurt. And that's where, for me, I feel like a playoff berth for the Eagles sets them back a few years. Because I think they will rest their laurels on a guy like Jalen Hurts, and that's going to hurt them in the future.
So here is the issue so I agree with your statement to an extent. So let's say they don't make the playoffs this year and they go into the NFL draft and they're looking for a quarterback in the draft. I don't think there's a quarterback in this year's draft. I mean, like obviously we'll get with our draft experts here, you know, once the season's over, and really dive deep into the draft with Tori and like Wyatt. But I don't see a franchise changing quarterback in the NCAA right now. Maybe the best quarterback to come out is that Nevada quarterback that just declared. He is a junior. I watched a little bit of his highlights today over lunch, and Hurts is better than he is, to be honest. And so, I mean, the only thing that could really possibly hurt the Philadelphia Eagles, or actually did hurt the Philadelphia Eagles, was when Gardner Minshew started that game and he beat the New York Jets. That was the biggest black eye for the Philadelphia Eagles franchise, just because let's say Jalen Hurts does lose the final couple games of this season and they miss the playoffs, and then they don't draft a quarterback. Then all of a sudden you have a quarterback controversy in Philly, because people are like, oh, we want Garner, the Minshew mania, all this other crap, right? And we are going and we see it time and time again. Every time a starting quarterback has to consistently look over his shoulder, see if he is going to get pulled or not, he doesn't play well. Look at Tua in Miami last year when he consistently had Ryan Fitzpatrick looking over his shoulder. He wasn't very good, right? This year he has taken leaps and bounds better. Yes, you can say second year in the league and the offense and like all that crap. No, it's because he doesn't have Ryan Fitzpatrick hovering over his shoulder trying to take his starting job at every moment. The worst thing that happened in Philadelphia was signing Gardner Minshew and letting him start that game.
Yeah, I'm not one of those guys who dislikes Gardner Minshew. Like, I like Gardner Minshew. I like his personality. I like him on the field, but I like him as a backup quarterback. I just don't think that I think that it hurts the Eagles if they move forward here with a playoff berth. But we're gonna get to a quick break.
There's better options at backup.
There is.
There too.
There is. When we come back from break, though, we are going to get to Shop Talk, and we're going to get to the NFL talking about COVID. We will be right back. Give us 2 minutes. All right, we are back. It's your boy BC Brandon Combs, along with Michael Buckheister. We've had a very good show tonight. We talked some college football playoffs, which I didn't realize until just a short while ago. This is Michigan's first college football playoff ever.
Well, this is the first time ever that we have two brand new teams in the college football playoff too.
Yeah, it's crazy. But we also had Graham Wallace on the show talking about his power rankings. We talked about the Tuesday night football games. Now I want to talk a little bit about the NFL and COVID before we get to some shop talk here. You know, one of the things that I don't understand. So the NFL said that they nearly canceled the 3 games that they moved. You know, the one game between Vegas and Cleveland on Monday afternoon. And then the 2 games that they played last night, they nearly canceled them due to COVID. And that got me thinking, is the NFL really concerned about player safety? Can they really honestly say that the players' safety is their number one concern? Can they honestly tell you after doing what they did with these games that it's about anything but the dollars in the pockets?
Excuse me as I pick up my laughs, Combs, because they proved that last year that they could care less about it, because when I believe it was the Denver Broncos played the Pittsburgh Steelers, right? The Denver Broncos had a practice squad, 7-string wide receiver playing quarterback for that game. If they were really truly concerned about player safety, they would have canceled that game last year or moved it back or done whatever, right? At the bottom line, Combs, it is how many eyes can you put on a product on any given day? Are they ever going to cancel a game? You are out of your Evan Loving mind, because they would literally lose billions of dollars, I bet. Because, like, I believe by adding this one extra game, they are making, what was it, $3.3 billion in TV and stadiums and tickets and, like, all that crap. So if they were to cancel one game, let's say it was the Seahawks versus Rams game, did many people see that game? No, because it was on Fox, and Fox doesn't really cater to the West Coast teams all that much. They would have lost, Combs, $7.6 million in TV money by just canceling that one game. Do you think the NFL wants to lose that kind of money? Hell no. At the bottom line, Combs, or the bottom line is, it's all about the almighty dollar. At the end of the day, they could care less about COVID safety, because they have cut back their COVID policies now. Now, if you are vaccinated and you are asymptomatic, you don't even have to get tested. So if you aren't showing any symptoms now, you don't got to get tested at all. Just because they want to get those players back on the field. Let's just be honest. They want Travis Kelce. They want Tyreek Hill. They want those guys on the field, because that makes me want to watch that game. Oh, Tyreek Hill isn't on the field. The cheetah isn't out there giving the peace sign. Let me change it over to the NCAA Kentucky versus Iowa game. That's what it comes. That is what it comes down to. They are competing with NCAA football right now, which apparently doesn't have a COVID issue, but every professional sport does, which is weird, right? They don't care about player safety.
No, they haven't cared about player safety ever. The only time they even talked about caring about player safety was when they were about to get sued because of CTE and trauma, and some of these former players that were starting to commit suicide.
Until that lawsuit came about. Fun
right.
fact.
Yeah. So it's just one of those things where the NFL, they don't care. They care about the money. They care about lining their pockets. They care about doing what they've got to do to keep the games moving forward. Excuse me. And the fact that they showed that with the Seattle Seahawks when they asked if they can move their game next week versus the Bears, and were told no. And the way that they didn't allow the Bears to move this Monday night game, and the Bears were told no after having 14 players on the COVID list and having to field a practice squad to have as a secondary, even though they played kind of surprisingly well. You don't care about teams, especially when they're not about to make the playoffs. You don't care about player safety. You care about moving them forward. That's what the NFL cares about. Now, my question is, why is the NFL so unprepared to deal with COVID 2 years after COVID's been a thing?
because I feel like us as a nation are just tired of it. You know, we are kind of getting more lax. Like we don't care. We aren't wearing masks. I mean, Aaron Rodgers was unvaccinated. He was supposed to be wearing a mask every time when he was on the sideline and in press conferences, and he wasn't doing that. So it is not necessarily as like being unprepared. It's the fact that maybe we weren't living in the reality where COVID wasn't going to ramp up again, right? Or it's just like, I mean, I don't want to get down this rabbit hole, but at the end of the day, it is all a political battle. And I think the only reason why, and I think the only reason why that these professional sports are having COVID issues, but yet college teams are not, is because where does every championship go, or where does every championship team get invited to at the end of the season, Combs? They get invited to the White House.
Yep.
They don't want to make a bad impression type thing, right? So
yeah, no, I get it. I don't think that they're unprepared to deal with it. I just don't think they want to deal with it. I don't think they want to cancel games. I don't think they want to do the things that they need to do, right? Because like me, I'm a regular Joe. And when I caught COVID and I wanted to get back to work, and they told me, well, we won't test you before 10 days is up. Well, why not? Well, because it doesn't make sense. Once you have a positive test, it takes 10 days to run its course.
Yeah.
Oh. Then why does the NFL test the guys every day after they get a negative test to say, hey, if they are a positive test, say, hey, if it's negative, you can play again?
I think they had 3 negative tests, right?
Yeah,
or something.
It's all you know. The other thing too, I find you take a rapid test and it comes back positive. Everybody's like, oh, you should take a PC test so that way they, you know, because that one's more accurate and it might come back negative. You might have had a false positive, but then if you test negative with a rapid test, I was like, it's good to go. No need to take PCT. You test negative. So it drives me nuts.
So if you want to talk about player safety, let's go beyond the COVID aspect. The NFL stopped caring about player safety when we instituted the Thursday night games every week.
Yep.
That is when player safety went out the door. Just because people are bitching right now because they have to play Tuesday night and they have to turn around and then play on Saturday. It's the same thing as playing on Sunday like on Sunday night. It's the same thing as playing Sunday then playing on Thursday. What's the difference there?
Right.
Because I have a Monday to recover. Like, no, it just player safety went out the door is when they did every Thursday night game. Why? To make more money.
And Alpha Rob says they screwed Beasley. He said he's good as the NFL is keeping him out of Sunday's game, not COVID, which is interesting to me. Because Beasley's the one that said he's not going to get vaccinated.
I believe he said he would rather die than have the vaccine.
Yes. So now he says he's good. He says he's testing negative, but the NFL is still holding him out.
Because by their protocols, if you have a positive COVID test and you are unvaccinated, you have to be set out for 14 days.
Which is absolutely asinine to me. And it's funny because, like I said yesterday, I actually asked my doctor that. I said, well, why you tell me that I'm good if I'm around somebody as long as I'm vaccinated? But I got vaccinated back in April. We've got 3 new variants that I wasn't vaccinated for. Why all of a sudden am I good as long as I'm vaccinated? That don't make any damn sense to me. But logic doesn't really play its role when it comes to money and politics. So it is time for Shop Talk. Guys, hit us up with anything you want to talk about. We will talk about anything. One of the things I wanted to get into is a couple of comments I saw earlier. The first one being Alpha Rob came in and said, off topic, guys, but how do you think Prime Marino would do in today's NFL?
To be honest, Combs, I did not see Dan Marino play a full game. I mean, when the Miami Dolphins would play the Chiefs, when I think it was Marino's last season, I was probably like 10 years old, maybe a little bit younger. So I only saw highlights of Dan Marino, but he was a very pass happy quarterback, right? I mean, like he kind of changed the game by passing the ball all over the field. Now, if you are asking if you were to put Dan Marino on the currently orchestrated Kansas City Chiefs, I think he would be about the same guy. I mean, because the Miami Dolphins had a pretty good team. They had a pretty good defense. the Miami Dolphins were a very well-rounded team. What ultimately hurt them in the playoffs was the coaching. So I think Dan Marino would be fine in today's NFL. He would probably be about the same guy. He would still be a first-round exit quarterback 9 out of 10 times.
So what hurt Dan Marino throughout his career was the fact that he would never restructure his contract or take a pay cut to allow the Miami Dolphins to have enough money in the cap space to go get a premier wide receiver. Something that you watch guys like Joe Montana do, to go get a Jerry Rice and to go have a premier running back and to go have premier wide receiver core. Dan Marino wasn't that guy. However, in today's NFL, where you can't hit a quarterback late, where you can't touch a quarterback, well, unless his name is Justin Fields.
He's a rookie. He's not even a quarterback. He's a running back.
Where you can't do those things, and you've got the athletes that you have today at wide receiver, I don't care what team you put Dan Marino on, that's a Super Bowl contending team. And I think Dan Marino's numbers would rise above what he was back then because of the way the league is now. It's a completely different. There's a lot of quarterbacks back then that would love to play in the game that we have today, not only with the athletes that you have at wide receiver, because now you've got guys who are, I mean, the average height of a wide receiver now has got to be like 6'6", 6'7".
Right.
And they're just massive. And that wasn't the case back then. Not only that, but not only do you have better athletes, bigger targets, but now nobody can touch you. I mean, Dan Marino in today's game, Dan Marino might be Tom Brady.
So I see what you're saying, and I understand what you're saying to an extent. But let me bring up that money asset like aspect here. If a quarterback is unwilling to restructure his contract to bring anybody in, that tells you that he is not a team player. And so that tells me that a team today would not really rally around that particular quarterback. He might have one good season and maybe one Super Bowl run, but after that, they're going to find his true colors. They aren't going to be able to restructure or sign other people because he'll be wanting a $100 million deal, and he won't.
The contracts of today, though, are way bigger than the contracts of then.
But
I mean, you give Dan Marino, but you give Dan Marino, Patrick Mahomes type money, and he's going to be all right with you. And the Kansas City Chiefs are doing just fine with talent around Patrick Mahomes.
As of right now.
I mean? So that's what I'm saying. Like a guy like Dan Marino, I think would be in his glory. Another one that I want to bring up here before we go ahead and head out here is Drew was listening to you talk about the Saints and maybe possibly picking up a guy like Danny Dimes.
Yeah.
And Drew said that's not a bad thing, Buck. Danny Dimes would probably do very well there. I don't disagree with Drew here. I think Danny Dimes in New Orleans, I think that he would excel with Sean Payton. Sean Payton does very well with pocket-type quarterbacks who can run just a little tiny bit anyway, as long as he doesn't get tripped by the 20-yard line again.
Right.
He does all right with those types of quarterbacks. You know how happy I am, how much I like my guy Jameis Winston, so I'm not advocating for Jameis Winston to lose the starting job here. But Danny Dimes in New Orleans makes a ton of sense. Danny Dimes probably have a better career in New Orleans than he will have as a New York Giant.
Yeah, because he is because they'll figure out his fifth-year option in this off season here, and all signs are pointing that they'll bring him back, right? But I don't think that the New York Giants will bring back Danny Dimes, especially if they miss the playoffs this season. And I'm not for sure if the New Orleans Saints are willing to bring back Winston after his ACL injury, because we've seen it with quarterbacks. Teddy Bridgewater, granted, it wasn't just the ACL. He blew his knee up with a grenade, right? But the Vikings let him go, and we've seen him bounce around. We've seen RG3 hurt his knee. He bounced around as well. Now there are quarterbacks like Tom Brady that tear his ACL and ends up having 15, 16 more years extended onto his career there. But Winston isn't a Tom Brady. Winston is a Teddy Bridgewater. Winston is a RG3. He is going to bounce around. And I think the Saints are looking for that young next Drew Brees. And when did the Saints bring in Drew Brees? After his 4-year deal from the San Diego Chargers. It's a match made in heaven.
Yeah, and I mean, what I saw out of Jameis Winston this year, Jameis Winston had an all-right season this year. They refused to open him up. They refused to allow him to be Jameis Winston. And I don't think that match is as good as I thought it was going to be. So I just, we'll see moving forward. But I mean, that does make a ton of sense.
Yeah, and and maybe they flip-flop teams. Maybe Winston goes to New York and maybe Joe Judge opens him up a little bit because, they will have a brand new offensive coordinator. So maybe the new offensive coordinator could have his picks of quarterbacks because the market is going to be out there. You're going to have Baker out there. You're going to have Jimmy G, maybe Taysom Hill, Jameis,
Yeah.
But I don't think Daniel Jones is the guy in New York. I think the new offensive coordinator wants to bring his guy in. Yeah,
I mean, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. They got some things to do there. I think, as Alpha Rob says, is talking about Dan Marino's footwork and quick release was crazy. You know who to love Dan Marino? Matt Nagy. Matt Nagy needs a quarterback with a quick release and great footwork. And he might have shined in a Matt Nagy offense. Matt Nagy might not be getting fired and looking like the complete idiot that he's looked like over the last 4 seasons as the Chicago Bears head coach.
Hey, Combs, breaking news. Matt Nagy signs a 5-year deal.
And Man Hour Nation, rise up.